Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. Good to have you back here again. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back on with you.
Some time back, you and I had a conversation about an organization, Virginians for Reconciliation. Could you inform the viewers in a short thumbnail sketch, what is Virginians for Reconciliation? What's your objective? What are your goals? What are you looking to accomplish when it's all said and done?
Well, I appreciate that question. It's an organization that was founded by a group of us about 6 years ago in 2018. And the idea was obviously 2019 was the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first African American citizens here in Virginia. Unfortunately, they were enslaved, indentured, and that's what began in August of 1619, the beginning of enslavement on the North American continent. Of course, Richmond, Virginia, ultimately became the epicenter of the slave trade, and we've made so much progress in giving every citizen the access to the American dream and full rights under the Constitution and the statutes of the country. But there's obviously still a racial divide. Some of it's pushed by people who like keeping that divide in place, unfortunately. But we wanted to get a group together, people, Republican, Democrat, black, white, rich, poor, Christian, Jew, whatever, and find common ground and see what we can do to build relationships and get people working together better. I mean, 2046, it's estimated that America will be a majority non-white nation. So it seemed like an issue of importance. So we immediately set about, when I say we, a group of citizens, we kicked it off actually with Governor Northam and a series of leaders from the Commonwealth, the Speaker, all in favor of this kind of organization. I'm the president, but the vice president is Dolores McQuinn, African American Democrat, pastor, legislator from Richmond. We're good friends, and we've tried to, even in this hyper-partisan environment, find some common ground. So we do a series of things, the latest of which was looking back at the 70 years since the Brown v. Board of Education case in 1954 that desegregated American schools under court order of the U.S. Supreme Court, and to celebrate how far we've come, how many changes have taken place in the law, and then honestly say, well, what else do we have to do from here to achieve the promise of the Constitution, especially the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments that were put in place after the Civil War, and the dream of Dr. King. I love his standard that everybody should be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And I think it's a universal standard we can all in all agreement. So it's hard work. There's a lot of people of goodwill that are working on it, and we hope it'll be some small part of people building relationships across the political divide, the racial divide, and doing something positive for our Commonwealth.
Governor, you and I are here in Virginia, so some of the viewers, a number of the viewers, will not be intimately familiar with all the details and aspects of this, but could you give a couple specific examples of projects, activities, events, whatever be the proper word, that the organization's already done to give the folks a feel of how you've moved it from a concept to reality? That'd be very helpful if you could.
So one is obviously, confronting the sins of the past, if you will, of history is important, so people just at least understand it. So there is a slave trail about 2.5 miles from the docks of the James River to a place called Lumpkins Jail in Richmond. It's literally a stone's throw, maybe a couple hundred yards from the capital of Virginia, from the governor's mansion, where for decades and decades human beings were, bought and sold like property. It's called Lumpkins Jail, owned by Robert Lumpkins, the slave trafficker in the 1840s, 50s, 60s. And so we give trail walks so people can understand what happened, people bound in shackles from the slave ships to the jail where they were either sold or many of them died. So we just understand the history and the reality that nobody did anything about it. In fact, encouraged it. So that's number one. Number two, we've done programs to bring people throughout history, recent history, that even though they're separated by either race or politics or some specific personal events, we bring them to speak so people can hear their stories. Probably the biggest one we did is we had the descendants of Dred Scott, the slave from
I'm gonna say
Southampton
Missouri.
County, Virginia.
You from Virginia?
So he was from Virginia, but he ended up in Missouri, and of course the case was out there, the Dred Scott case, one of the worst cases in all of American history, that said that black people were never intended to be citizens under the Constitution. And ultimately, a couple of years later, we fight the Civil War, and then we pass the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that essentially overruled Dred Scott and gave everybody, regardless of color, equal access to the ballot box, equal rights under the Constitution. That was one of the programs, had about 900 people in Norfolk that showed up, showing the interest that people have in listening to some of these stories of the past. And then just a few months ago, we had seven Virginia governors, including the current governor, Glenn Youngkin, and six others of both political parties who participated in the commemoration of the 71st anniversary of the Brown v. Board of Education on May 17th in Richmond, where they all gave their perspectives about progress made, challenges remaining, and what do we do about public education at the college and K-12 letter to be able to just do better to give equal access to a high quality education to people of all colors in Virginia, regardless of zip code. So those are just some of the things to promote understanding, dialogue, because all we can do anything about really is today and tomorrow. We can learn from the history, but the history is done. And so we just commit ourselves to a better tomorrow with great access for all to the American dream. That's what we're trying to do.
Governor, at the very end there, you touched on the third point, which was education. You spoke extensively of that at the event you were just speaking of in Richmond a couple or so months ago. But you were talking about education, teacher salaries. I think you sort of joined those issues as being extremely important across the board for all. Could you add a few more details on that so the viewers could understand the thrust in your reasoning of highlighting that issue in particular?
Yeah, I think it's a very little debate that education is the ticket to prosperity for our future. It's what transcends politics. It's what passes on the values and the education and the high standards from one generation to the next. Some have called it the great equalizer, the great emancipator. If everybody has equal access to a first class education, that we don't have some schools that are bad and underperforming and some schools that are good. And if money's an obstacle, then you address that. If the quality of teachers is an obstacle, you address that. If it's disciplinary issues, parental involvement, then you address that. I mean, every school may have different challenges about why their kids may be performing at a good level, a high level, or a low level. And that's up to local school boards and local principals to figure that out and correct it. So, a couple of years ago, there was a marvelous thing that happened. Newt Gingrich, former Republican Speaker of the House, and Al Sharpton,
Mhm.
who generally don't agree on, the time of day, actually traveled the country and said this is the civil rights issue of our time, making sure we have great schools regardless of zip code. And I agree. Most people would agree, on that. The question is, what do you do? What's the solution? And I'll be blunt about it. For the longest time since I've been in office, 34 years since I first got elected, the Democratic Party's all they're talking about, it seems like, is money. And that only gets you so far because about 70 years of history will show you that money alone is not going to fix the problem. It can be wasted, squandered, put on low priorities, etc., and doesn't fix the problem. There's a whole other range of things. Governor Allen did a lot on this, which is to increase high academic standards and expectations out of people. Being able to encourage parental and other involvement to make sure the young person's got support at home. Having programs that make sure the young person is ready to learn when they get to school. So there's various school lunch programs, et cetera, that can be put in place. School choice. So kids aren't trapped in a failing school and they have a choice about where to go. I'm for tuition tax credits for charter schools and other things that give young people effective choice about where they want to go to school. I think competition is good within the school system. Government monopolies, like most monopolies, don't work well. So we need to be creative with that. Paying teachers higher salaries. Now, the General Assembly and Governor Youngkin have done a really good job, done better than anybody in the last probably 20 years, increasing teachers' salary. But uh, you see a salary of an offensive lineman in the NFL and you compare that to a teacher's salary and you wonder, do we have our priorities right? So, that's an extreme example, but the point is we've got to figure out how do we bring the best and brightest committed people into our education system so they've got not only good teachers, but good role models, good mentors, etc. And there's a lot more. I could go down the list of other things like that. But I think, we really need a healthy debate on not just what makes us feel good, but what works, what's worked in other schools. States are the laboratories of democracy. We've got good examples with schools. I think Florida's a good one and others. What Louisiana did after Hurricane Katrina and other things that stand to be a good example. And don't make it partisan. Don't make it a litmus test on what the teachers' unions want or, whatever. Let's do the stuff that works because it's about the kids, not the staff. And so those are just a few of the things.
Governor, as always, you've covered a great deal in a very limited amount of time. It certainly is appreciated. I know that all the viewers will get a great deal of insight from this and perhaps become aware of things that before they see this, they were not aware. As always, it's much appreciated. Thank you so very much for your time.
Well, I'm really glad to do it. I thank you for what you're doing with the podcast and bringing important contemporary issues to people, and I hope you'll keep up the good work.
Plan to, Governor. It's much appreciated. Thank you
All right.
indeed.
Thank you.